Hello and welcome to your Chapter 8 video lecture. Today we're going to talk about traditional media channels or channels in advertising. You know, because you are all Z's and millennials, you wouldn't think that traditional media is still a force in advertising. You would think it would all be social media or banner ads or internet ads or something like that. And for your audience it is. But remember, for other audiences, there's still a lot of people out there that do watch television. Now, a lot of people do watch streaming TV too, so television advertising with streaming TV is cutting into their market. But a lot of people are still watching football, people are still watching sports, and a lot of people are still watching television shows as they run on prime time or what have you. So we are going to talk about not only television, but the other forms of traditional media, which includes newspaper, which includes magazine, includes billboard. It includes radio, television, also includes direct mail, and also includes posters. So lots of different things to talk about. The major key points we're going to make here is the advantages and the disadvantages of different traditional media. And as you know, with regards to advertising, actually with regards to anything in marketing, everything starts with who are you going to do what to. So the first thing you've got to do is decide on your target market. Does your target market watch TV? Do they read magazines, etc.? Once you understand that, then you can start determining your vehicle, you can start determining your creatives for those vehicles, and then hitting your target audience. So with that being said, let's get started on channels and traditional media, and I look forward to seeing you on Monday. So as I said in the video, or in the introduction, Chapter 8 is all about traditional media channels, and we're going to talk about all different types of media channels and who's involved, and also the disadvantages and advantages of each. So really the media strategy is the process by choosing a vehicle. As you know, everything in marketing starts with who are you going to do what to. So the first thing you've got to do is select your target market. Your media strategy is going to be absolutely dependent upon your target market. As you know, if you're going to go for millennials, you're not going to use a lot of newspaper advertising or even TV advertising. If you're going to go for older Xers or boomers, well, then you might use magazine or TV or newspaper. So your media strategy truly is dependent upon your target market. So media planning is just that. It's the analysis of the target market first, focusing on their behavior as well as other consumer behavior, focusing on their purchasing process, focusing on their media choices and what they do as far as media choices, listening to their viewing habits, understanding their viewing habits, and then planning your media based on that. All of that should be done before you even do your creatives. All of that is part of your current state. That's why your current state is so important. Remember the 3 pillars of your project: current state, creatives, and then implementation or channels. This is going into the third section or the third pillar of your project. Therefore, if you do a good job on your current state, understanding your target market, understanding their viewing habits, their purchasing process habits, their consumer behavior, you'll do a fine job of understanding your media planning. So these are the people involved in media planning: media buyer, the media planner. The media planner really is the key to all of this. She or he works with the creative team, the account executive, the client, the account planner, and also the media buyer to coordinate all of these things. However, with regards to the media selection, really the media buyer is the one that negotiates the rates, purchases the space, and understands, really have a good relationship with the different medias in which she or he is being connected to. Really, it doesn't matter between the agency size. A lot of people would think that the bigger the agency, the better off they're going to be with regards to buying media, but that really doesn't hold as much weight or as much water as you would think. Really, your media buy and your rates for your media is all dependent upon supply and demand. For instance, right now, we're in a heavy demand for media buy because we've got an election coming up. It is late October, looking towards early November. Media is at a premium right now because of the election. Media is then going to be at a premium as we move later into November, into December because of the Christmas holiday times. But then come around January, late January, all the way really into the summer, media purchases are going to be lower again. So it's really supply and demand. And one of the things that these media people do, and I'm talking about newspapers, I'm talking about magazines, but also I'm talking about television, especially local TV as well as national TV, but really local TV. They know that right now is a hot spot for TV advertising. So regardless of how big the agency is, they're going to keep the prices high. And people, the media buyer has to negotiate with them and try to reserve space at the best rates they possibly can. So some advertising terminology that you need to understand. Now, again, like for OTS and GRP, you do not need to calculate that. You just need to understand the definition. That's very, very important. Again, with OTS and GRP, you're going to be tested on that, but you're not going to be tested on how to calculate it. You're just going to be tested on the definition of it. So let's start with reach. Reach is number of people in the target exposed. So if you take a look at TV, TV has one of the highest reaches, especially on a national level. You look at the Super Bowl, it's probably got the highest reach of any TV advertising all year, even more than World Cup soccer, because 110 million people are going to be in front of their TV during that 4-hour period of the Super Bowl. So reach is measured typically on a 4-week period. Then you've got frequencies. That's a number of times of exposure. So one of the highest frequencies you could possibly have is outdoor advertising or billboards. Take a look at a billboard along the can of worms. People are going to see it twice a day for really a whole month, or 30, well, not really 30 days because you don't work 30 days, but 25 days, say. So that's a 50 exposures. So that is frequency. So reach is the number of people that see it. Frequency is the number of times those people see it. OTS is placements times frequency. So that's the number of ads you place times the number of people that see it. If you look at these consumer types of products, particularly insurance, beers, and other things, the OTS is incredible because they're continuing to put placements on major sporting networks and major TV networks and major sporting events for TV. So your placements are considerable. You might see, wow, 5, 6, 7 Budweiser commercials in the span of a 3-hour football game. And the frequent, so that's, and so you're going to see it that many times. And then people are going to see it over and over and over as they watch the football game. So that's placements times frequency. And then gross rating points is the vehicle rating times the opportunity to see. Vehicle rating would be how popular the show is. Obviously, Monday Night Football is the most popular show on TV, without question. Thursday Night Football being the second. So the rating is very high. The opportunities to see is very high because there's lots of placements in that. So your opportunity to see is your vehicle times your placement. Your cost is CPM, is cost per thousand. Remember, M is not million. Everybody messes that up on an exam. Remember that your CPM is cost per thousand, the M being Roman numeral, not M standing for million. Your ratings are measured by your percentage of target market exposed by a medium. So the percentage of target market exposed by a medium, not your percentage of people see it, but your percentage of target market exposed. So if you're looking at young millennial or Z young men, that if that's your target market, football is a high rating because a large percentage of target market will be tuned to football on a Sunday. CPRP is your cost per rating point, which means you take a look at your rating point, which I just talked about, and how much that costs. Your cost per rating point is your CPRP. One of the cost per rating point, one of the lowest cost per rating point is really the Super Bowl. If you think about it, Super Bowl is about $5 million, but there's 110 million people to see it, so you're reaching people for less than a nickel. The problem is you got to have $5.5 million to do it. Continuity, you've got continuous campaigns, which are your Geico commercials, your Progressive commercials. You've got pulsating campaigns, which is they heavy bursts here and heavy bursts there, and then back off, and then heavy bursts and then back off. And then your flighting campaigns, which is heavy advertisement on certain times of the year, like Cadbury eggs around Easter times. And then finally, your impressions are your gross impressions. So your total audience exposed to an ad. Remember, you're not going to have to calculate this. Just please study those last two slides because you are going to be tested on it from a definitive or definition standpoint. So achieving your advertising objectives. Man, there is the $64 million question. I mean, how many times do people have to see an ad for them to take action? How many times do people have to see an ad for the brand to be recalled? How many times does someone have to see an ad for the evoked set or for having it in the evoked set? Well, there's really two theories. The first theory is the three exposure hypothesis, and that was done by Herbert Krugman. Herbert Krugman says people need to see an ad a minimum of 3 times for it to be effective. The first time and the second time they ignore it. The third time it's effective. It's got an intrusive value. And with regards to Krugman's 3 exposure hypothesis, he says the more you hit them, the better off it is. So if they can see the ad 100 times, it's better off than if they can see the ad 99 times. I don't particularly subscribe to that particular hypothesis. I like the recency theory. The recency theory says because there's so much clutter, you could hit somebody 5, 7, 10 times and they still not recognize it. But the recency theory says that if you've got selective attention or you're looking for that particular product, one exposure might help. For instance, suppose I'm looking for a laptop and I'm thinking about laptops. And I see one commercial for an HP laptop, and I really like all the features on it. I might say, you know what, that's the one I want. There's no sense in looking anymore. And I buy that based on one exposure. So the recency theory says people pay attention only to certain ads, and that is dependent upon whether they're interested in the ad or whether they're interested in purchasing the product. So that requires continuous advertising because people you as an advertiser don't know when somebody's going to be in the market for, say, insurance or for a laptop or for a car. So you continually advertise in order to find when those people are looking for a car or insurance or a laptop, and they can see your ad at that point in time. I would rather subscribe to the recency theory than the 3 exposure hypothesis, but you know, I'm just a lowly professor. What do I know? So what is the effective reach and what is the effective frequency? Who knows? If there's too few ads, it's not effective. Too many ads, you're wasting your money because after a while there's a diminishing margin of return. The size of the ad, the placement of the ad, also there's variables with regards to how effective the ad is, with regards to do people like the ad? Does it show what it needs to do? Is it more of a rational type of ad with features and benefits? Is it more of a humorous type or an emotional type of ad? Nobody really knows. However, for brand recognition, the emphasis has to be on visual product presentation And for people to recognize brand, they're saying frequency is more important than reach. In other words, hitting your target market as many times as you can for brand recognition. If you have a new product and you want people to understand your product or see your product, then reach is much more important than frequency, because if they see it once and it's interesting, they will remember it. So it all depends on what you're trying to do and what your objective is. If your objective is more towards brand recognition, then you want frequency. If it's more towards brand recall or product recall, you're going to want reach. So now we get into disadvantages and advantages of different traditional media, starting with television. Really, as we know, the major advantage of television is the high reach. There's high frequency potential also. You can have commercial after commercial after commercial. It's very low CPM, cost per million, or excuse me, CPM is 1,000. Sorry about that. Don't get that confused like I just did. And you can segment your target audience based on the show in which you advertise. The disadvantages, it's a high cost per ad. Look at the Super Bowl, $5.5 million. Very low recall, and also it's a high level of clutter. So there's a couple of things that you need to know about television and about television advertising. First of all, is rating. Rating is the number of households turned to a program versus the total number of households in a market. So that is number of households turned to a program. So any program. So basically, it's a number of households that have their TV set on over the total number of households in the market. And then share is the total of number of households that are turned to a particular program versus the number of households within that market, or with the television turned on. So for instance, you want to know what the share of Survivor is, or what the share of Modern Family is. It's the number of households turned to that particular program over the number of households with the television set turned on. Whereas rating is the number of households turned to a program, say Survivor, versus the total number of households in the market. So that's rating versus share. Please make sure you understand that, because you will be tested on that. So YouTube and television, obviously YouTube is an excellent outlet for people to put commercials on. So oftentimes you'll see a television commercial and it is simultaneously rolled out not only on TV but also on YouTube. What advertisers are hoping and what creative directors are hoping is it goes viral. Things like the things that I've shown you in the class, like the Doritos Super Bowl ads and the Audi Super Bowl ad and some of those things. It results in higher recall. It has a potential of going viral, and it has a potential of reaching a hell of a lot more audience, because you don't necessarily have to be tuned to a program in order to see the commercial. Of course, we know the bell cow for TV advertising is the Super Bowl. This is an older slide right now. Super Bowl advertising is $5.5 million, $5.5 million per 30-second ad, but it's 110 million plus people viewing. So your CPM, or your cost per contact, actually is about a nickel. So it really, really does pay. But again, one of the disadvantages of TV is it's a huge, huge, huge outlay of money as you go in. Radio advertising, the advantages is recall, because you can promote recall through music. You can promote recall through slogans and other things. Ad music can catch audiences. It can get stuck in your head. As you know, oftentimes it does get stuck in your head. You can get intimate with DJs and have the DJs do an outro to your commercial and an intro to commercial. And actually, and you've seen DJs do this where they say, yeah, and I've gone to that particular restaurant or what have you. With the streaming radio, you can listen to it anywhere. With the internet radio, you can listen to it anywhere, and you can get your favorite station anywhere. And you can get creative with regards to radio advertising with vision and images, not vision, but images that you can portray through sound and through verbiage. The disadvantage, very short exposure time, very low attention. Second of all, oftentimes people aren't listening to the radio anymore. They're doing Spotify, they're doing Pandora, and they're doing ad-free listening. Almost impossible to reach national audiences unless you have a national program like Westwood One football. And people just, every time a commercial comes on, they switch the station. So here's a Nielsen rating for Rochester and the Rochester market, WBEE. I believe WBEE, I've never listened to it, but I think it's the country station. Has the #1 rating with, what does it say there, 99,000 people listening. The next one would be News Radio, WHAM, with 79,000 people. DKX, which is, I believe, the urban station, which is 75,000. And then it goes down to the teeny bopper station, PXY, the oldie station, WCMF, and then your WAIO, which they call classic rock. I call that oldies, and BZA, which is the Buzz, which is also oldies station. So really your country station here in Rochester is the #1, followed by news, followed by the urban, and then you've got your, they call it classic rock, I call it oldies. Potato. Outdoor advertising. The advantages is the high frequency, huge frequency, especially if you're looking at the can of worms. I don't know if anybody noticed this, but our own Dr. David Kunch, Sir David Kunch, was on the St. John Fisher ad that was right there on the can of worms as you went around to 490 and started heading downtown on 490 West. For St. John Fisher. A high frequency, also you reach a lot of audiences, people see it. The problem is, again, very short exposure time. You've really got to reach people through visuals and without any really text or verbal, because people aren't going to read it, because hopefully they're paying attention to the road. Very little segmentation is possible. And of course, clutter. Major clutter out there. There's all kinds of things. People aren't really paying attention to billboards, but some people are. You can also get very creative with your visuals on billboards. There's a great example. Love to see this, where they're talking about toothpaste, and the guy's biting that. It's a really creative ad. Here's another one where the van is covered with paint, and just an excellent outdoor advertising. Very creative there. Lots of good visuals. There's another one for Bic razors. I thought this was very creative with the white background, and they've shaved the grass there. This one's almost creepy with a little boy. Looks like he's going to pick it up for Hot Wheels. I think it's very creative from Mattel to do something like that. Couple more with the broccoli and with the McDonald's French fries going across the sidewalk. So outdoor advertising doesn't necessarily have to be billboards. It can be, sidewalks. It can be on bus stations. It can be just about anywhere. So that's your outdoor advertising. In Rochester, you can see the rates here. Surprisingly affordable. This was a couple years ago, but really billboard rates in Rochester are surprisingly affordable, given the fact that you have a very high frequency. There's also a lot of things you can do with digital. If you go from, and I come through this just about every Thursday and Friday because I'm coming from Brockport, but as you come on 490 through downtown, right before you hit downtown as you're going east on 490, there's a couple of very creative digital billboards out there. Always catch my attention because of the flashing lights and things like that. So there's a lot of things you can do with outdoor advertising that promotes not only people seeing it, but also promotes recall. Magazine advertisement, the key advantage is you can really segment your market. You know, you can hit housewives through modern homes and gardens, and you can hit guys with ESPN magazine and Sports Illustrated and things like that. You can have a direct response technique where you have those little inserts in the magazines. They have an incredibly long life. A lot of people will save magazines forever and ever and ever. Go into doctor's offices, you see old issues of magazines. People read it during their leisure, and oftentimes you can create really nice visuals in an magazine and catch people's attention. The problem with magazines is people aren't reading them anymore, especially Zs and millennials. They're reaching and going towards blogs more than they are magazine advertising. So oftentimes people aren't reading the magazines. There's a lot of clutter in the magazines. Very long lead time. If you want to put something in, say, Cosmo, you might be looking at next year. And it really is quite high as a cost. But given the fact that it's archived, you do hit a lot of people. Newspaper advertising, geographic. You can hit a geographic market pretty hard. You've got a strong audience interest. You've got a very select target market. You've got less expensive. There's a lot of copy that you can put on there. You can fill a full page ad. You can have coupons, so people cut out coupons. You can have inserts like on Sundays. The disadvantages, nobody's reading them. A lot of clutter, aging readership, and again, disease, the millennials, even the Xers are not reading newspapers like they used to. So selecting the proper media is important, and who knows really. So what a lot of people do is an IMC, an integrated marketing communication, which means they're going to select multiple medias. They're going to go TV, they're going to go radio. I mean, look at Flo. She's everywhere. She's on the internet. She's on TV. She's on radio. She's in magazines. She's on billboards. She's everywhere. And basically, those heavy consumer advertisings are going to do that. They're going to plan their media. They're going to buy their media. The media planner and buyer are going to get together, and they're going to try to leverage their dollar or leverage their advertising expense as best as they can with good media buys, with targeted media buys, and with multiple media buys, which is called the media multiplier effect. Developing logical combinations. You know, you look at your market scale, regional to national or global. You look at your market characteristics, your demographics, your psychographics, your media habits, your consumer behavior habits. Then you take a look at your media choices, and then you make your message content. Oftentimes, message content is going to be dependent upon your media choice. And then media selection in B2B markets. Oftentimes, you're going to see B2B markets advertise on consumer television. You see a lot of that with IBM. IBM sells no consumer products, yet they advertise on consumer TVs, on consumer channels and TV and things like that, because decision makers are consumers. They're seeing it because it's a good outlet for their money, and it also helps. Oftentimes, B2B tends to be heavily with Salesforce. So again, it's another outlet to add to their sales force. Traditional B2B media tends to be trade journals, etc., and there's a lot of clutter in that. However, trade journals are still very, very important. And then for B2B, as you can see, newspapers, magazines, television, but trade journals are still the bell cow at 26%, television at 25%. Television has a high expenditure because it is expensive. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a high frequency, it's just a high expenditure. I would say as far as frequency and reach goes, B2B publications or what we would call trade journals would be the way to go. You also have some consumer magazines, newspapers, radio, those types of things. So this is your B2B advertising expenditures. That my friends, is going to do it for this lecture. I will see you in class on Monday. Take care, and I look forward to seeing you.